Hello and welcome to another episode of the Renewable Energy Movement, powered by Kigyo. This week's guest is Nikolaos Karagiovanidis. Did I say that correctly?
Yep.
Close enough.
Close enough.
Nikolaos is Director of Project Development for Chint Green Energy. Thanks for being here, Nikolaos.
My pleasure.
Like ever, let's kind of start at the very beginning, not necessarily of your career, but of your kind of journey into the renewable space. And how did you end up in this world?
Yeah, this goes me back to 2011 when I joined UV in Greece. UV, of course, started business there before I joined, but I was invited to take care of the business development activities in North Greece. And then I undertook the whole market. So I started like this, offering EPC services and project development in Greece. However, a couple of years later, due to the missing legal framework, I had to jump with UV, of course, to the Turkish market in order to start business there until the legal framework comes back or is refreshed in Greece and gives us again the opportunity to develop new projects there. So we jumped to the Turkish market. We did a very well job there, and we managed to be the first international company that signed a large scale, that time it was large scale EPC contract with a local client, a local construction group, a big construction group.
In Turkey or in Turkey that was?
In Turkey, yeah, in Turkey. In Greece, we have done a lot of EPC businesses. We signed a lot of EPC contracts and ON, of course, accompanied by ON contracts. We developed some projects that are realized recently, actually. And yes, in Turkey, we did the same. The business model was offer EPC services to third parties or develop projects from scratch, greenfield, mainly finance, build, and sell them afterwards to off-takers.
And how was the market in both Greece and Turkey back in 2011 or in that period?
I would say it was there were a lot of similarities. What we considered that time as a large scale was not large. Is not large today.
Yeah,
obviously, we are dealing with projects of 500 kilowatts, 100 megawatt each, PV mainly. In Greece, even smaller, like 100 kilowatt or 500 kilowatts PV. It was struggling because you had to persuade the investors and the banks about solar, the revenue schemes, the securities. They had to feel confident first and then invest. It is not like today that after so many years of experience and references, everybody feels more confident and is ready to, even the banks are not reluctant to finance renewables.
And was there anything from like a subsidy perspective from either the Greek or the Turkey government to support at that point, or?
In Greece, that period when I started, it was the period that the incentives were fading out. In Turkey, there was the so-called local content. So if you could install mounting structure from local suppliers, then you could get a premium, let's say, on the feed-in tariff. It was working like this. It was about structure mainly at the beginning, and then modules, inverters, etc.
And you were you working in Athens at that point, right?
Yeah, I was working in Athens. We were flying frequently to many cities in Turkey, and once we secured the first contracts, we hired a team and established a local office, and then we returned back to our bases. That time, of course, 2 years later, the Greek market was back again. There was the first pilot tender that took place, and few projects started being realized. So there was a market again. And of course, our local team in Turkey could undertake the activities there. So they didn't need our help, our support anymore. They were well trained, experienced, and well staffed. However, if you want me to jump to my next career step, this was the ticket, let's say, for me to make a name in Turkey, and a competitor of UV that time invited me to join them and do the same thing for them. this time in Turkey. So again, I moved from UV to ET Solutions. It was a subsidiary of ET Solar and worked under the same model, let's say, offering EPC services in Turkey for the Chinese owned group, which was actually based in Munich. And after having done a successful job as well there with more than 25 megawatts EPC contract signed and executed, I was asked to relocate to Munich and join their headquarters in order to undertake a bigger area, let's say, including Iran, including Egypt, Jordan, Middle East area, I would say.
Yeah, interesting. And just to go
Israel
back
as
to
well.
to go back when you first went to ET Solutions and you were kind of still focusing on, or mainly focusing on the Turkish market. Do you speak Turkish?
No, I tried to learn, to be honest. 3 years without lessons, but just trying to learn.
How was that doing business at that time? As we know, the industry is very favorable of local language. If you're working in Germany, you're expected to speak German. If you're working in Italy, you're expected to speak Italian. I could imagine it was similar. So how did you find that or navigate that?
Yeah, good question. Basically, when we went with UV, when we entered the market with UV, it was, we had, let's say, the German label. Okay, we were UV. We were not the Greek team of a Greek, we were not the Greek company. We were the German company. So we were very welcome, first of all, from the locals. So they were expecting that the conversation and the discussions and negotiations will be in English. We were talking about, as I said, large-scale projects for that period. So the investor side was also companies that were used to speak and negotiate in English. Definitely, the local language plays an important role, and that's why I tried to learn, to make some jokes, to make the other party feel more comfortable, to rely on you. Yeah, all these emotional things, I would say. It helped, but if you cannot be fluent to negotiate the contract, legal terms or technical terms in the local language, then obviously, consequently, you have to establish your local team. And that's why we did it, actually. Yeah. So you can overcome this problem, let's say, this bottleneck, by training and hiring and training a local team.
Yeah. So you're going in at an earlier phase, establishing the project, and then the local team is coming in behind.
Exactly.
You.
Yeah.
So sorry, I cut you off, but then you then moved to Munich and were in a more of a multicultural.
After this successful market entry with UV, as I said, this was the ticket for me to join ET Solutions GmbH. And after repeating the success, let's say, they asked me to move to Munich in order to undertake a greater area, which I did. And since 2016, I am in Munich and I live in Munich. However, a couple of years later, ET Solar Group bankrupted, and I had to move. I was lucky enough, and due to my network, IB Vogt approached me in order to establish business in Greece for them. So after 3-4 consecutive years that I was working in Turkey, I actually had to go back to Greece, where the market was again hot, one of the hottest markets in Europe. And I'm talking about 2018. So I joined IB Vogt at that time and started developing projects, because IB Vogt's model is totally different from what we discussed before.
Yeah.
It's a pure developer. So the new challenge for me was to develop projects in Greece from scratch, create a network of partners, local partners, advisors, engineering offices, etc. Mature the projects, of course, finance, build, and sell them afterwards. So we were not offering EPC services like previously. This was the main difference.
That's quite a change from obviously the role that you had been doing in the previous two companies. How did you find that switch? I guess is my first question. And secondly, were you the only man on the ground in Greece at this time, or did you have a small team from then?
First of all, it was very interesting, I would say, And I was always in love with project development activities, because when you develop a project from scratch, it's like you grow your kids. And I was always considering these projects as my kids, as my family. So I was very happy to see them growing to become mature and reach RTB stage, or even afterwards sell them. So this change from pure EPC sales to pure project development activities, it was a very interesting part for me. Different approach, I would say. It's not selling services, but selling a whole package, including services. More complicated because you had to deal with local authorities, bureaucracy, paperwork, licensing.
This is where you really need the local language.
This, of course, this is a must. Yeah, in this case, it's a must. And you had to follow also the changes in the regulation. In Greece, we have a lot, and every 6 months, I would say. So I had to catch up with all the changes in the regulation and position ourselves accordingly in order not to lose track and have big chances to mature our projects. So this was the first part of your question. I forgot the second.
Yeah, sorry. The second was like, were you operating on your own at this point, or did you already have a small team?
So when we entered the market in 2018, obviously it was a one-man show. So I was traveling a lot from Munich to Greece, to Athens, to start the business, and as I said, to find the right partners, to sign JVs or development service agreements with third parties, and evaluate some opportunities, some project opportunities to develop. Once this workload was becoming considerable, obviously we started hiring people. It was not difficult to find new employees in Greece because the sector was well known, and you could find well-experienced people easily from local companies or from other foreign international companies that were existing before we joined, and there were a lot. So we easily structured the first team. However, to be honest, and maybe contrary to the rest of the international players, we had a different strategy, and we kept the team. How can I say that? With few people, not a lot. We kept the team small. So we created a local, small but hardworking, flexible, which was the main, let's say, team. And of course, we could outsource services, or we could add new members depending on the workload. Other companies follow a different strategy, actually creating a mirror structure like their headquarters. So they have a person for the legal team, a person for the O&M, at least one, etc., etc. So we chose a totally different strategy to keep the costs low and create a hardworking team.
Yeah, interesting. And how about retention of the staff? Were you because it was obviously quite a competitive time, and you had some big players operating in the Greek market. Did you have any issues with keeping the team together, or?
This was a very good question, because indeed we faced problems, if we can say that it is a problem. We cannot prevent anybody, or we cannot keep anyone in the team without his consent. It's a free market. However, indeed, when we made our name in Greece and we had the first projects mature and at RTB stage, or some of them well connected and sold, obviously the local competitors started looking at our staff, at our CVs. So we lost 3-4 people to well-known competitors, but it was normal. It goes like this.
Yeah, it is a competitive space, right? And it can be difficult. That's why I asked the question. And then from a market perspective, I'm guessing that the size of projects that you're dealing with now are significantly greater than when you were in Greece back in 2011, right?
Yeah, definitely. We are talking about 10 times or 50 times bigger. However, If you consider now the revenues of 1 megawatt PV plant in Greece, it's the same like a 100 kilowatt PV plant back to 2008. Okay, so it's, in absolute amount in euros, it's the same.
Yeah.
Due to the feed-in tariff difference.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I was having this conversation yesterday actually with somebody. There's a bit of an obsession about project size, but there's not much discussion about, a project cost or project value. If people, not people wouldn't disclose this, but if people actually disclose the value of their projects, it's almost more impressive than the size of the project, right?
Correct. Of course, we are talking about feed-in tariff, but there was also a considerable change in pricing in EPC in the capex.
Yeah.
It was
And
too high. Now it is too low.
Exactly. You were in Munich for the majority of this time, but incubating a team in Athens, or were you doing a bit of both?
No, I was traveling every month.
And how did you find the remote aspect of the job? So when you were in Munich, and I guess you had an office and a team in Greece, how did you find that? So it can be quite challenging managing remotely.
I would say that it was a bit tiring, obviously. Well, it depends. If you have the right colleagues, so responsible people that can execute and complete a job and reliable, then you don't have to deal with micromanagement. You don't have to care about obvious things. It is easy.
Yeah.
And our success in Greece is the result of it, that we found very good employees. As I said, some of them left to competitors later.
I'm interested in this, obviously, with my background, but how did you go about finding the employees? Did you do it yourself? Did you have an internal recruitment team? Did you use external partners?
Now, with IB Vogt, this worked like this. There was a global HR team based in Berlin, in our headquarters. But when we had a hiring need in a local market, the country head was asking the HR department if there is any candidate in their database any profile that we could interview. Otherwise, of course, job postings, LinkedIn, third party, headhunters, etc.
Yeah, so a bit of a multi-approach, let's say.
Yes.
Multifaceted approach. So your time at RB Vogt only actually came to an end this year, is that right?
Last year,
yeah,
when we managed to sell our portfolio, it was about 1.2 gigawatt of projects. Finally, around 800 were left, and some of them were sold previously. But last year, we managed to sell around 800 megawatts, consisting of PV and BESS standalone projects in different stages of development, RTB, advanced, or early stage, to Faria Renewables. It's a company that belongs to Omnes Group.
Who, sorry?
Omnes Group.
Oh, yeah.
So after that, IB Vogt decided to exit Greece for several reasons, and the strategic decision was to sell everything and exit the soonest possible. And this is what we did end of last year.
Did you sell? I guess you sold the whole portfolio to the same group, right?
Exactly.
And where does that take you to today then?
Yeah, obviously it was known to me that IB Vogt will cease operations in Greece, and I was looking to move. And due to my good relationships, cultivated all these years since 2011 with many competitors, suppliers, manufacturers, etc. I had a very good deal and very interesting new challenge for me with Chint Green Energy, and I'm now the director of project development activities in Balkans, Baltics, and Nordics.
Okay. So I was just going to ask actually if your frequent traveling had slowed down, but I guess not.
Since the markets are more than Greece, more than one, obviously I expect to travel more frequently and more often. However, we are still in the evaluation stage, and while evaluating a project, you just need inputs and do a desktop job. Once you complete the due diligence, this technical / legal due diligence, then obviously you need to start traveling for negotiations, face-to-face negotiations, contracts, SPAs, JVs maybe, etc.
you've got quite a wide geographical remit there. Do Chint, or do you see that as almost like an emerging market kind of portfolio, or a newer market portfolio, or how is it viewed?
First of all, it is very interesting to me to consider many markets rather than a couple, and to learn how it is done in different markets. It's not everywhere the same. The principles are the same, but some things are in a different order, let's say. Emerging markets, I wouldn't say that, but I would say that there are mature or congested markets. For example, Greece is still a hot market, but you cannot consider it as emerging anymore. It's a very competitive landscape. Few projects are left. You don't have big expectations for the next few years, so it's not like it was before.
Yeah.
Romania, Bulgaria, these are mature markets, I would say that a very interesting market is Poland.
Yeah.
And we are lucky because our headquarters are in Krakow. So we are based there, have a big team. And the thing is that with Chint, the big advantage is that we can be really competitive due to the fact that we have our own equipment. We have a strong energy modules, we have Chint inverters, transformers, and of course our own battery systems. So we can really decrease the capex and offer value for money solutions to the end investor. Especially when we develop the projects ourselves, it's even more.
Yeah, and you've got flexibility on a number of projects, I guess, or types of projects.
Yeah, now of course we are now looking for PV standalone, BESS standalone, and hybrid projects as well. Yeah. So co-location is now also a new trend. It makes sense.
Why. Yeah, I'm sure that's why the geographical side is interesting as well, because a project in the Nordics will have to be set up a lot differently to maybe what you're more experienced with in Greece, for example.
Yeah, the dynamics are different. The local conditions are different. Sometimes I'm surprised by differences. I can also mention one that really was a big surprise to me. For example, in Greece, when you want to install a PV plant in a forest, it is forbidden. Yeah. You are restricted. However, in Sweden, you can only install in forest areas because there are a lot. So this was a very big surprise for me. I couldn't believe that you can cut trees to install PVs. And I'm not talking about I'm not talking about agricultural areas. Okay, I'm talking about forest.
Yeah. I understand, but I guess it's just down to how much forest they have. I guess that's exactly the reason behind it. But still, it's a huge shift to what you're used to. You've maybe already answered this question, but what are your predictions for the next couple of years in the solar market? I know it's difficult to say because different countries are at different phases always, but you've got quite a wide exposure. So what's your kind of couple of predictions for us?
Your statement is true. However, there is a common problem for all the markets: grid congestion. Mm-hmm. Which leads to curtailment. And we face this problem almost in every market. Yeah. And for those that we don't face it today, we will face it in 2-3 years. So I believe that the market and the demand will continue growing, maybe with a lower pace.
Yeah.
However, the key to escape from this, let's say, grid bottleneck is to add batteries and to prioritize co-located assets, PV plus BESS, wind plus BESS. Okay, batteries will play a very important role to support and fight the grid congestion. Will create an extra room for capacities to connect new projects. And of course, they will also offer the auxiliary services to stabilize the grid, etc. It's not like the previous years that we were expecting huge growth, but it will continue with a lower pace.
Yeah, it's the common theme, hey? Grid, dealing with the grid. Nikolaos, thanks very much for coming on. I'm really excited to watch your journey with Chint, to be honest with you, especially given, like I said, you're covering such a vast area and not all of those countries are. I'm super familiar with. We base a lot of our efforts in 2 or 3 countries across Europe. So yeah, thanks a lot. I'm looking forward to watch your journey. Yeah, maybe we'll get you on in the future in a few years.
Thanks a lot. It was very interesting, and I hope that we can repeat this whenever you feel that is necessary.
Yeah.
It was my pleasure.
Thanks, Nikolaos.